Yep. So to continue with our previous discussion, right? So we have started discussing on copy data activity. Well, everyone, can you please go on mute? Okay. So Friday we were discussing about copy data activity. So we just started discussing on copy data activity, and we got to know the purpose of copy data activity, which transfers the data from one source system to sync. Okay, so being that different combinations, maybe you can pass files from ADLS to database or on-premises to cloud. Okay, so you can make anything by using this copy data activity. And as I mentioned, this is more useful activity among other activities in ADF because this is the core functionality, right? The ADF functionality itself is a kind of ingestion, right? So that ingestion that is being done by this copy data activity. Okay, so we just started with what are the different source options we have in copy data activity, and also sync options. We just discussed a few, not all. We'll be discussing, and we'll continue the discussion today. Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to copy data activity. Sorry. Okay, okay. Yeah. Sorry. Are you able to see my screen now? Now? Okay. So we just started discussing on this copy data activity. So this is what we discussed, and we were able to copy data from database to ADLS. And same way, you can be able to perform ADLS to ADLS from one container to another container from the same database, from maybe from one schema to another schema. So you can try with the different combinations. What are the combinations you can by using this source and sync? Okay, and we just saw the basic functionality and basic configuration from your source and sync. Okay, so apart from the basic stuff, you have different things you can think of from your different configurations or parameters available in your source and as well as sync. Okay, so we will be discussing one by one what exactly these configurations are talking about in both source and sync, and also we'll be looking at mapping settings and everything. So all part of this copy data activity. And so during our earlier discussion, we have discussed like some concepts are common in most of the components. So if you see this retry mechanism, so these things maybe you can see in other activities as well. So we'll be covering here so that while working on other activities, maybe delete activity or lookup activity, you can see these options even in those activities, and you can think of and you can just compare what we are discussing here to those activities. Okay. Yeah, so I'm first taking into this general tab of your copy data activity. And so here, name, description, we know activity state. If you want to deactivate this, you can select from here as well. So apart from this option. Okay, so here you have that option, and as well as here also you can have that option. And timeout, it is something you are trying to copy from a particular source to a sink. So while doing that operation, sometimes maybe your system is down and the network configuration, the IO or network is not good to carry your data from a particular source to sync. Okay, so in that case, how much time you want to tolerate, how much time you want to spend before failing your pipeline. So that you can specify over here. Maximum amount of time an activity can run. Default is 12 hours. Okay, so it will allow to that particular point of time, and after that it will go and fail your pipeline. Okay, so that's what this timeout is. And retry, so during this period, right? So suppose now the connection is not established, and maybe after how much amount of time you want to connect to this particular system, and how many number of retries you want to do that. Okay, so those you can be able to specify in these particular options. Okay, so I'm not going to execute with these options. It is self-explanatory. Maybe you can give it a try when you are practicing on this particular activity. Secure input and output. This is something while extracting or while transit the data from input to output. If you want to secure the data, then you can be able to select these options. Okay, and always remember and always have this in your mind that whatever the operation you are performing and whatever the task you are selecting the option, so keep cost in your mind. So when you say secure or when you say something timeout or retry, whatever it is, everything incur to cost. Okay, so if it is required, whether it is required or not, so just look at that and then use that particular options or configurations in any of the service. It's not only ADF. I'm saying I'm referring to each and every service of your Azure. Maybe it's you can consider ADB, Logic App, ADLS, wherever it is. Uh, in ADLS, for example, we have seen hot, cold, archive storage types. Okay, so simply if we put everything in hot tier, definitely in terms of performance, you can see a lot of performance improvement. But is that data, whatever you are storing into that particular tier, is it really required to be in that hot? Okay, so you have to think in all those aspects and then you have to take the decision. Okay, so same way, I'm just explaining you. Okay, so this is a general tab. So this is self-explanatory. And then coming to source, maybe here, since we have selected source dataset as database, and as you guys know, based on your dataset in every activity, the options will be different. Okay, so when you select a database, the database related options or parameters you can see over here. And if I select dataset, the parameters will be different. Okay, so for now, I'm just taking this as a database since it is already existing with the configuration with the database dataset. I'm just considering that, right? So, so we know how to select data set. We have done that. Since this data set is expecting some parameters at the time of creation, so you are seeing these particular parameters. You just need to pass these parameters. And again, we know that if it is hard coded, you have to do that. And sometimes you need to pass those as a parameters from your pipeline or trigger. You'll be passing those things to your data set. Okay, and since it is database, you are seeing this option: table, query, store procedure. So the same options we have already seen in yeah, in lookup activity and get metadata activity. So there we have discussed. So if you want to specify simply a table, so this refers to this particular data set. And if you see the data set, this data set is pointing to a particular link service, which is pointing to a specific database. I'm not open, but that will look for a particular database. Maybe let me open that. Okay, that will look for a particular database by using this link service. And what table you are trying to extract, it is this schema and table name. Since it is parameterized, of course, you have to pass those schema and table name as a parameter to this particular data set. So that's what we did. And when you select a table, automatically it hit this particular thing and it will be able to extract the data and ready to load the data into this particular sink. Okay, so that is this table option. If you specify query, so whatever the query you want to write, you can be able to write the query over here. It's not only select star from suppose sales lt dot address. No, we have already seen this option as well. Okay, in query, uh, in lookup activity and as well as in script activity, we have seen this how to write. Okay, so if you want to write some 100 lines of SQL query, you can be able to embed that SQL query over here so that through this data set, you can be able to extract the data and you can be able to store the data into sync. So that is this query option. Otherwise, since we are talking about table, definitely we have other option that is called store procedure. So if you want to call a store procedure which is already created at your database level, you can call that store procedure very well from this particular store procedure option. So all these options we have already seen, as I mentioned. So that is the reason I'm not executing. So you can take any store procedure which is already created in your database, and if it is pointing to some parameters, of course you have to import those parameters so that if any parameters are created at the store procedure level, those parameters you can be able to see over here. If no parameters, you will not see any parameters over here. Okay. So at the time of creation of this store procedure, we have created two parameters. So that is the reason you are seeing over here. So that's how you will be using this store procedure option when you are looking at this particular database dataset. Okay. So these are common. Again and again, I'm saying why I'm saying uh, don't by heart your syntaxes or a particular copy data activity. It is going to this table query. No, this is a concept. This concept is common for most in the sense like in store procedure activity, copy data activity, lookup activity, script activity. So all these things are common. Okay, so just learn in that concept wise so that you'll get to know like where and how to use all these options. And query timeout, it is something like if you want to come out of your query, like you are executing a query and that query, I want to stop after this particular time. So you can specify that minutes, how many minutes you want to execute that, you can do that. Okay, so this isolation level, okay, isolation. So while reading, what kind of isolation you want to perform at your table level. Since it is table, you are seeing this option. If it is file, you will not be seeing this isolation level. Okay, so if you don't know what is isolation and all that stuff, right, read through. So go to YouTube or go to ChatGPT and try to understand this. Why? Because this is not a major topic to us, but if you want to understand that, just explore your knowledge. That's all. Okay. So partition option. So if your table is partitioned, then you can be able to see these options. So since it is not partitioned, we are not seeing anything over here. Okay. And this additional columns. Suppose you are extracting the data from this particular table. Suppose you are extracting data from this table, and table is calling having suppose 10 columns, 10 fields. Okay, apart from those 10 fields, I want to add few more fields. Okay, so if that is the case, you can add those columns over here. Okay, you can add suppose file name. I want to get my file name. From this drop down, you can be able to get that. Okay, it's not file, right? So that is the reason it's not coming in. If you want to add some column, so you can write that column name, maybe current date. Okay, and what is the logic for that? Maybe you can drag from here. Okay, and you can be able to use something modified date, and you are passing that modified date to this particular column. Okay, so something like that. If you want to do some additional columns, you can be able to add over here. And as we discussed, again, it's an ingestion tool, pipelines, whatever we are creating. So this is very rare scenario. So creating columns or manipulating columns. So that is very rare scenario. Okay, will not be applying some transformations at ADF pipelines level. So if you want to apply the transformations, we have this data flows. So inside the data flows, we'll be writing our transformation logic, not at your regular activities and at your pipeline level. Okay, so consider ADF always an ingestion tool. So even we'll not be writing logic or transformations inside your data flows, as it is performance wise it is a bit high, sorry, bit um, uh, uncomfortable in terms of performance, and as well as cost is very high. Okay, so initial days of ADF, maybe we have used pipelines and as well as data flows. But later, the industry standard is for ingestion, we will be using ADF, and for transformations and everything, we'll be using Databricks. Okay, so if you want to combine both the Databricks and Data Factory, that also can be done. So here we have uh, Databricks notebook, and you can call Databricks notebook whatever you have written inside your Databricks by using PySpark or Scala Spark, that you can call from this ADF. Okay, so that integration we'll discuss. We'll discuss at the time of notebooks how to integrate and how to call from ADF to notebook and how to pass parameters from ADF to notebook. All those things we'll discuss. Okay, so remember that, and don't think like how can I make transformations and how can I write the transformations. Don't go that much complex level, because industry is not looking for complexity. Yeah, industry is looking for like how to automate, how to make it low code, no code, something like that, right? So don't look at your legacy style of learning or legacy style of doing your job. Okay, so this is how you can be able to see different options. Why I'm saying all these things, right? So copy data activity, this is at most important activity in your ADF. So you need to understand all these things. Of course, you may not use all this at the time of your process or project, but you need to understand. So based on the need, maybe you will be using these things. Okay. So this is about source, different parameters in terms of dataset related to database. So if it is database dataset, then you will be seeing all these options. Any questions for me in this? Okay. So I'm going to ADLS file. Okay, so instead of database dataset, I'm going with ADLS dataset. So if you go with ADLS, automatically you can see some changes inside your parameters or properties of your source. Okay, so I have selected ADLS dataset, and since this dataset is expecting file parameter, so now that is the reason you are seeing the file. Okay, so that we know. And then these are the properties particular to your file dataset, ADLS dataset. So here, what do you want to extract? What do you want to extract? So is it exact file what you have mentioned over here? Okay, or wildcard file path. Suppose I want to extract from a particular container, from a particular folder, and some wildcards, maybe customer start.txt. So that indicates all the file names which start with customer will be considered, and all those files data will be passed to my target. So that is what this wildcard file path. Okay, and other part is list of files. So this also we have discussed at the time of delete activity. So if you want to extract, suppose from 3 4 files, okay, and I want to pass the data into this particular sink. So that this is different and this is different. Wildcard file path, it is something like if you have the file cust1.txt, cust2.txt. So if you have something like that, then we will say cust start.txt. So this will extract the data from 2, 3, 4, or 20 different files and can be able to pass the data to your sink. Okay, but list of files, right? This list will be something like this. Maybe my file is cus.txt, trans.txt. That means these are the naming convention is not exactly something like this. Okay, the name might be anything. Okay, so that's why you can use a list of files. And also another thing is to use list. Maybe this file is available in a particular directory, and your next file may be available in directory and then subdirectory, maybe subdirectory, something like this. Okay, it may not be available in the single directory. So if you want to go to wildcard file path, right? So you have to specify your file path over here. Okay, and you have to specify wildcard. If it is list of files, I can be able to extract from any directory. So what do you want to extract? That you have to specify inside this list of files. I'm not going to execute this, you guys practice it, creating some files into different directories, and how to create a particular file and how to call that by using this list of files. Just give a practice from your end. If you don't understand how to define this, go to the video which we have discussed in delete activity. So there we have discussed in detail how to do all this stuff, right? So do that part if you are not understanding how to do that. Yeah. With that, there is another option that is called enable partitions discovery. This is something, suppose your data ADLS is having partitioned folders, and inside the partitioned folders, you have your data. And I want to copy those partitioned files into my target. That is your use case. So let me go to, yeah, I'm just opening the database and as well as data ADLS as well. This is my ADLS container input. Suppose let me just create one directory just for this practice. Okay, I just created one directory called order, and I'm just trying to upload a file to this. Maybe I just uploaded this orders file. Okay, so for practice purpose, right? I don't want to uh, use this many thousand records or something, but I just want to use some records. Okay, I'll be using first a few records, maybe 8 records I want to use. Okay, so that the example will be clear while explaining you. So I have created this. Okay, suppose I want to, I'll be exporting the same kind of file again, the same file I'm using. Okay, so this time maybe I'll be using different records. Okay, it's already there. Let me rename this. Since it is already there, right? It is giving you the error while uploading the existing same name. I'm just trying to explain export orders. Okay, I'll open again these orders and maybe I'll consider a few records instead of all the records. Okay, so I have created two files inside my input folder and orders subfolder. Inside that, I'm having two files, orders.txt and orders1.txt. So I'm going here now and I'll use well-called file path. Okay, instead of yeah, maybe let me use this data set and well-called file path. And inside my container, I'm having input adder and others.txt. Maybe if you want to get URL, maybe I've copied from there and I'm just placing here. Of course, it is not required like file name and as well as my container name. So that container name is already there and inside input order. Okay, and what is your well called file name? Maybe I'm using order start.txt. Is it txt.txt? Yeah. So order start.txt. So that means we are trying to extract the data from both orders.txt and as well as orders1.txt. Because we are using well called file path. Okay, I'm just trying to explain you what is this enable partitions discovery. I'll come to that point later. So first of all, I'm just trying to extract 2 or 3 files at 20 or 30 files, and I'm going to place in my target system. Okay, so inside the target system, maybe I'm saying orders underscore consolidate.txt, and which path it is pointing to. Okay, it is pointing to output. So inside the output, I'm going to create this particular file. So with the combination of these two files. Okay, so our intention is I want to get the data from all the files from this particular order, which is starting with order and ending with .txt, and I want to extract all the data and I want to put that into my output with some file name. Okay, so let us see how it extracts and how that plays into my target. Okay, so it is success. And if you see here, something like two files got read and how many records got stored, that kind of information you can be able to see here. And I'm going to my container and go to output. And okay, so the file got created, orders underscore console.txt. So if you see the data, maybe I can be able to see my data, only 9 records. Uh, eh, it has to get two files, right? Input order orders.txt. There's 7 records. Orders1.txt. It has 9 records. So expectation is we need to get both the files data we are expecting in this, but I'm seeing only one particular data. Why? Input order start.txt. Okay. Or otherwise, what I will do is maybe let me create. I'm not sure why is that not happening. List.txt. So inside this, maybe I'm using list of files option. Input orders.txt, and at the same time orders1.txt. I'm using another option to get that output. And I'm going here and list of files, browsing, and would like to get that list.txt file. Twenty-five seconds. Taking a long time. Oh, okay. So this is pointing to incorrect path. Maybe that is the reason. Common not available when copying a single file. Okay, so maybe it is pointing to incorrect path. Maybe that might be the one reason. I just changed that. Let us see. Maybe no confusions, right? I'm just trying to get two files data into single file. So that is our ultimate goal. So after that, why this use? Maybe that we'll see. Order failed again. Copy behavior, block name not allowed with the preserve of a flattened hierarchy. Type message cannot adopt copy behavior, not specified when copying from folder to a single file. Preserve hierarchy. Okay, so maybe the earlier error message is something like you're extracting the data from a data set which is pointing to a directory. Okay, so from the directory, we are extracting some list of files. Okay, and I'm trying to put that into some file. So this data set is pointing to a file. So if that is the case, and if copy behavior by default is a preserve hierarchy, right? So that is the reason we got that error. Okay, so we are not supposed to use preserve hierarchy while copying multiple files from a directory to a file. Okay, if it is directory to directory, then preserve hierarchy is meaningful. What do you mean by preserve hierarchy? It is something like when you have directory, inside subdirectory, and you have some files, and you have multiple subdirectory level and files. So if you use that preserve hierarchy, right, it will maintain the same kind of directory structure even in your sync, and the files will be copied. Okay, so if you are not doing such kind of things, and if you are doing directory here and sync is file, that time you will get the that kind of error. So that is the reason I am just using match files. Okay, so when you change this, we were able to success in the execution of your pipeline. So now let us see if it is getting the data. Consolidate. Okay, so now we got the data. Now we got all the matched data. Okay, so with this, right, if you see here and forget about this header. So we got two times because we have two uh, files with the header. So that is the reason we got it. And if you want to ignore it, maybe while creating dataset, you can skip that particular first record. So that we can do. Okay, forget about that. Our thing is like in this total records, how do you know which record comes from which file? So I know that I have some record from artist.txt and few record from artist1.txt. Okay, so if that is the case, right, you are not sure from which partition or from which file you got your data. Okay, so to understand that and to make it a better understanding, we have this option, enable partitions discovery. So when you select this and how you are getting the data from different partitions, that you can be easily understand from which partition you are getting the data. Okay, so for that I'm just creating this input again, maybe order inside order, right? So instead of creating the files like this, let me create a partition. Here, right, the partitions will be something like this. So the partitions will be created with year equal to 2024, month equals to January, something like that. So how do you create these partitions? That we can see at the time of Databricks. So remember this concept, partitions. While creating the data in Databricks, using PySpark, we'll be using a command called partition by. So by using this, you can be able to, suppose you have 1,000 records or 10,000 records from your source, and you want to partition the data into different partitions. So that can be done by partition by in PySpark Databricks. Okay. So when you do that, right, your data structure, the directory structure will be created something like this. Okay, so since we have not used Databricks so far, I'm just creating manually. Okay, I just created year equal to 2024. So same way, maybe I'll be creating one more year equal to 2025. Okay, so once you create, right, you have to place the file into that particular directory. Otherwise, that will be gone. So that you cannot see. So for that reason, I'm just uploading file into this particular directory. I'll take the same upload. So I have created two directories inside my Arter. Okay. So not at my Arter directory, I have created two more subdirectories. One is year equal to 2024, year equal to 2025. Okay. So with this, I want to extract the data, right? So I'll be deleting this. I'm not having any data at my parent directory level. Parent directory in the sense Arter level. So inside the Arter, suppose this is one partition and this is another partition. All the maybe sales data or orders data which is related to 2024 year, all those data will be available in this particular directory, and all the 2025 year data will be available in this particular partition, in this particular subdirectory. Okay, so now I want to extract the data and I want to consolidate maybe the complete 2024, 2025, 26, all the consolidated data I want to place into one single file. So that is my business requirement. So if that is the case, so you can easily use this copy data activity. You don't need to do anything. So maybe I'm just using wildcard file path instead of that one. Okay. So order start.txt, and then in my sync orders consolidate. Okay. Order. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to output. I'm just removing this for better understanding. And I'm just executing this. So when earlier, right, we got some error when execute this, but let us see now. So based on the use case, actually, you have to make use of all these combinations. Okay, so practice. So you have to go with practice. Okay, it is success. So we have used the same, but it got failed because of this data set. Okay, so because of this data set from directory to a file. So that is the reason we got that failure. So now it got success. And if you go here again, and you can be able to see the data got created into this particular console.txt, and you can be able to see your data. Okay, you can be able to see your data, something like this. So the data might be corrupted. So whatever I have taken, right? So the data is not correct. So that is the reason you are seeing something like this. Yeah, let me get the proper data so that you'll see. All data is proper. Under 2024 underscore.txt. Okay, it's already having few records. Then why did we get the data something like this? Order. Okay. Not sure what happened earlier. Now I'm able to see something like this. I got my data. Okay. And but from which partition I got this data, that we are not sure, right? Okay. So to get that, we have this option. We have this enable partitions discovery. Okay. So when I do this, automatically it will you will get one more property, that is partitions root path. So when you are not enable that, you will not be able to see that particular option. But when I select this enable partitions discovery, automatically you can see this partitions root path. So that means you have your partitions. You have your partition something like year equal to 2024, 2025, something like that. For this, what is the root directory? It is something input order. So until this order, you have to mention inside this particular root path. Okay, so that it will consider until that order, that will be considered as root path. So from there, it will be considered all the remaining things inside that is partitions. So I just selected that until order. Okay, so this is sync, let it be. So now I'll go and re-execute that. But before that, I just want to remove this. So it's not a great business use case, but you have to understand that how you can see that partitions in your output. To start integration, runtime itself is taking longer time. It is taking 15 to 20 seconds. Yeah, once it picked up, the education is very quick. Yeah, maybe I got my output into consolidate now. And if you see your data now, right, at the end, you can be able to see the partition number. So 2024, 2025. So something like that. So with this, right, we can understand that this data is coming from this particular partition. So when you select this option, so forget about the data. So the data is something junk data. So that is the reason you are seeing something like that. But at the end, you are seeing your partition name. Okay, so that you will see when you select this particular enable partitions discovery. Okay, so just remember that option. And once you select this, you can be able to get this particular partitions root path. So from this, you just need to specify what is the root directory for that particular partitions. And then max current connections, it is something like, so when you are extracting the data from that particular sources. Okay, so when you say wildcard file path, maybe multiple files, or when you go with this one, maybe one connection, so something like that. So how many number of parallel connections, concurrent connections you want to connect to this particular source? So this is something called parallelism. So oh, what kind of parallel concept you are going to apply while extracting the data from this particular source systems? Okay, so maybe you can consider that as a parallelism or multi-threading. If you are Java, Python background, you can compare this with multi-threading. Okay, so that is max concurrent connections. If you want to say two connections, maybe you can select that. And again, everything is cast. So when you say this one, it goes with some cast. when you say enable partitioning is not a cost factor. Okay, but this is go with some cost. Okay, so and this is skip line count, right? So if you want to extract the data from a particular file and I want to skip maybe first record, I don't want to get first record into my source system. And if you want to skip the first record or first 10 records, I want to skip. So simply you can specify over here. So those records, the first few lines will be skipped while extracting, and that will be considered to your output. So that is this skip line count. And additional counts we have already seen. So this is how you will be having multiple properties in terms of ADLS dataset. And earlier one, whatever we have seen, that is database dataset. So same way for sync as well, you will be having multiple options. Okay. So though ADLS is here and as well as here, the properties will be a little bit different from source to sync. Okay. So in sync, the properties are something like copy behavior. This is already we have seen. It will maintain the hierarchy when you select this preserve hierarchy. And if you want to combine all the data into single file, then you'll be using this merge files. And flatten hierarchy, it will combine multiple from single directory, it will combine all the files into single file. So something like flatten when you select this copy behavior. And max current concurrent connections. So this is available in here and as well as here. So this max concurrent connections will tell you about source connections. And same way, how much parallel you want to make it while loading the data into your target. Okay, so that can be done in max concurrent connections inside your sync. Okay, and block size, it is something specify the block size while writing to your data to your ADLS. Okay, so what is the block size you want to maintain? So if it is something 100 MB, so obviously if it is 4 MB, right? So it will create 25 blocks. It is something like how your data is dividing into blocks. Okay, so that depends on your decision. Maybe I can make it 4 MB, 8 MB, something like that. Okay, so this also we have to intelligently take the decision. It's not like some number is interesting, so don't go with some 20 or 50 since the number is interesting. No, that also depends on your performance and also cost. So if you make less in terms of block size, and if the volume of data which is coming here, if it is very big, so that means you are creating a lot of blocks, multiple blocks. So that will degrade the performance. Okay, so something like that. So based on your volume of data, you have to take the decision. And then metadata, it is something like suppose you are creating the file. Okay, suppose I have created this file, right? So I just clicked on that and I'm able to see something like this. And here in metadata, by default, it is nothing, no data, no metadata available here. Suppose while creating this file, I want to provide some information along with the file. Along with the file, I want to mention, suppose this file is creating by a particular LOB. Maybe some sales team is creating this particular file. And if you see some issue with this file, and if you feel this data is corrupted or this data is incorrect, okay, in that case connect with some team. Okay, so if you want to specify some such kind of details, that you can be able to provide here in this particular metadata. Suppose maybe I'll say LOB, it is something marketing team. Assume that it is a marketing team. And again, contact details, it is something like xyz at the rate abishoot.com. So if it is, where is at the rate? Yeah. So if data is having some issues, immediately connect with this particular team. So that's what we are mentioning. And when you execute this, right, let me just change the file name instead of the same file name. So if you do that, right, along with the data, you can be able to see the metadata now. So whatever it is, whatever the information you want to pass along with your file data, that you can be able to mention inside this particular metadata option, so that those things will be coming over here. So let it execute this so that we can be able to see the data. Yeah. So consultative one. So I'm just coming down now. So if you see here, so that data will be coming here. Okay. So that you are passing some information along with your data, so that you can be able to mention by using this metadata. Okay. And file extension. So what extension you want to specify. Okay. So that you can mention over here, .txt, .csv, .parquet. So that you can be able to mention over here. Okay. And then max rows per file, it is something I want to provide only some 10 rows for each file. Okay. If it is beyond that, maybe if I am having 15 rows, so create two files instead of single file, so that you can be able to specify with this. Okay. It is something like to balance your system or balance your file size. So in those cases, right? So sometimes you'll be getting this kind of scenario. So especially in interviews, so people will be asking, um, yeah. So this is one of the option which is available. So if you make it something like 10 rows, obviously it will create multiple files instead of a single file. Okay, with some extension, maybe _1 or _2, something like that it will create. So just give it a try. Just change this and do that. And one more option is file name prefix. So here you have created your file with something like this, and instead of that, I want to prefix something. Mm, sales underscore. So if you specify this, right? So before this, every time whenever you're creating the file, that file will be created with sales underscore. Okay, so that indicates this file name prefix. So this is why is this? This is because suppose you are saying here max rows per file. So in this case, right, you'll be getting multiple files over here. So for each file, it will be created with sales underscore something underscore 00.txt, and again sales underscore some file name, whatever you have mentioned here, underscore 001.txt. So likewise, if you want to get such kind of prefix for each file, whatever you are creating here, so that time you'll be using this file name prefix. So if you understand clearly, right? So all these options, it's not required for every use case. Okay. So if you need, then only you'll be using the options available here and as well as here. Okay. So please remember that. Yeah. So that is about source and sink. Any questions for me? Source and sink and the different properties. Okay. And this is mapping. Mapping is something, so far what we have discussed, we just took some data from source and we ingested that into target, into sink, and whether it is database to database, ADLS to ADLS, whatever it is. Okay, and we have not specified anything in terms of field names or anything. So if you want to see that and if you want to change something there, then you can go here to mapping and you can import schemas. Okay, so this will import your source schema and target schema. So this we have already seen at the time of stored procedure activity. Okay, so here I'm seeing source is 1 and year. Why only 2? Maybe data is not proper. Let me take proper data, right? Let me take proper data. What is this? It is an output. Let me take from input. It's all about data. Just play with the data. So from input, I want to take some proper data file with emp.txt. Okay, so data is proper. I'm just taking that emp.txt. So So this is my source, and maybe sync emp1.txt. I'm just giving some name. Now I'm going here, and again, if you want to remove everything, just clear it. And again, I'm doing import schemas. Failed. Failed import schema are invalid when processing partition discovery. Okay. So we gave partition discovery, right? So uh, we were saying something in dataset, and enable partitions we mentioned order or something else. So that is the reason we got that error. So getting multiple errors is good. Okay. I'm just again import schemas. Okay, so now I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 something, and my target is column 1, column 2, column 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, why is this happening? So let us do that. Let us just uh, trace back to my source data set. My source data set, it is actually having a proper header and proper data, but here I'm not getting proper data. Why? So DSADLS trans input, is this inside the input? Yeah, it is inside input, and emp.txt. Emp.txt we are passing as parameter. So it is good. And now skip line count. Yeah, maybe because of this. I don't want to skip. Okay, and this is my first row as header. So you have to mention this as well. Okay, so that first row will be considered as a header. Okay, and also we made this skip line count just for practice purpose, right? We just did that. So that is the reason we are not getting proper field names. Okay. So now if you see employee ID, department ID, something like this I got, right? And if I want to create a new column, so just like we have seen here, right? So just like this, here also you can be able to add any column, and you can be able to write the logic. And from here, right, from source, I can be able to do this. And but while passing to my sync rate, I don't want to get all these 7 columns. Maybe I don't want this column, I don't want this column, so that only these columns will be passed to your sync. Okay, so that kind of minimal transformations you can be able to do that. Okay, so it's not that like you can be, even you can write your logic something like you can be able to use your functions here. Okay, so I can use logical functions, mathematical functions, whatever the function you want. You can be able to write the logic here, and you can pass that to my output. Okay, that is there. Suppose something went very wrong. Thought of doing some experiment. Yeah, let it be. I don't want to do that. Usually we will not touch this. All right. So if you want to do some kind of minimal mapping, that you can be able to do this from this mapping. Okay. So I don't want to confuse you guys. Okay. So just understand that inside the mapping, you can see the mappings. That's all. Right. Um, and then settings, maybe I'll take this tomorrow because it will take some time. Then user properties. Okay. With this, I'll stop here. User properties are something like when you execute this, right? You are saying your execution is something like this. It is giving you what is the different activity name and when it got started and what is the runtime. And then here you can see user properties. So it is something like some explanation. So just by looking at this, you can understand somebody has executed or some inputs to the people who is looking at this particular output window. So if you want that information, that you can be able to specify inside this user properties. Maybe uh, I'm executing for a particular batch or a particular prod issue, some information you want to pass while the execution period. So if that is the case, maybe you can be able to mention that prod issue, maybe something claim ID is null, something, right? So when I execute this, will it execute source emp.txt, emp1.txt. File name prefix is supposed only when source is tabular. Okay. Yeah, we have not selected anything, so I'm just removing this. Practice all the options, please, so that you'll get to know. Of course, you will forget everything after few days, but because we will not be using all these options inside your projects, definitely. Okay, it is successful. And now if you see, right, apart from the regular stuff, you can be able to see something, user properties. So just click on this and this will give you that information. So batch, whatever you have given, and production shoe, I've done something, right? So just by looking at that, you can be able to see like why this run happened. So what is the reason behind to execute this particular run? So those things you can be able to get it from this particular user properties. So if you want that, you can be able to do that inside this user properties. Okay. So this is about user properties and settings. As I mentioned, maybe I'll let you know all these options tomorrow. Okay. So that's about copy data activity with the different options available. Any questions for me? If not, yeah, maybe we'll see tomorrow. Thank you so much. Bye.